in a war defined by unimaginable cruelty. One unit stood out for crimes so grotesque that even the SS, the very architects of genocide, recoiled in disgust. These were not Germans, they were Russians, men who turned their guns on their own people, carving a legacy of terror so severe that even their Nazi masters would ultimately destroy them. Their leader was not a general of great fame or charisma, but a bureaucrat, a man forged in Stalin's prisons and unleashed in Hitler's shadow. Tonight, we reveal the story of Bronislaw Władysławicz Kaminski and his army of traitors, known to history as the Rona Brigade, the Nazi collaborators who disturbed even the SS, the warlord born of chaos. The story begins far from the battlefields of Europe, in the forgotten corners of the collapsing Russian Empire. Born in 1899 in the Vitebsk Governorate, Bronislaw Kaminski grew up in a world fractured by revolution, famine, and ideological chaos. His father was Polish, his mother German, two identities that war within the same man. When the Russian Empire fell to Bolshevik revolutionaries, Kaminski was not a soldier, but a bureaucrat, a minor engineer who kept his head down. Yet in Stalin's Soviet Union, no one was truly safe. In 1937, during the height of the Great Purge, Kaminski was arrested by the NKVD for anti-Soviet activity. His alleged crime, criticizing collectivization and having German connections. He spent years in the Gulag, a frozen purgatory where ideology replaced mercy. It was there, among the condemned, that Kaminski's hatred for Stalin's regime hardened into something else, a vision of revenge. So when Hitler's armies thundered across the Soviet frontier in June 1941, under the banner of Operation Barbarossa, Kaminski saw not an invader, but an opportunity. The Nazi invasion shattered the Soviet front, and in the chaos, Kaminski re-emerged, ready to build his own fiefdom under German occupation. The genesis of treason, the Lokat autonomy. In the summer of 1941, the Germans were not prepared for the vastness of Russia. They needed help, collaborators who could govern occupied territory, enforce order, and hunt partisans. In the small town of Lokat, they found one. Initially, the Germans backed a local schoolteacher named Konstantin Vasko Bojnik to administer the region. What became known as the Lokat autonomy. His manifesto promised freedom under German protection, but freedom was short-lived. When partisans assassinated Vasko Bojnik in January 1942, Kaminski stepped into the void. With methodical precision, he reorganized the autonomy into a miniature puppet state. He raised taxes, restored private land ownership, and most importantly, formed a police militia to crush partisan resistance. The Germans were impressed. General Rudolf Schmidt of the 2nd Panzer Army described Kaminski as a man of uncommon orderliness and zeal. By late 1942, Kaminski commanded over 1,000 armed men, the beginnings of what he called the Russian Liberation People's Army, or Rona. His administration grew into a bizarre hybrid, part German occupation, part local tyranny. He printed his own currency, raised his own flag, and ruled over nearly 1.7 million civilians. To Berlin, the Lokat autonomy became a political experiment, a test of whether Slavs could govern themselves under Nazi supervision. To the locals, it became a nightmare. Kaminski's men, armed with German weapons, but Russian resentment, began carrying out cleansing operations, raids on villages accused of helping partisans. Survivors would later recall men speaking Russian, wearing German uniforms, and killing without hesitation. Kaminski had found his purpose, and his vengeance had only just begun. Blood in the birch forests, rise of the Rona Brigade. By 1943, the Rona Brigade had evolved into a formidable force of over 10,000 men, cavalry, infantry, and armored detachments. Kaminski was no longer just a mayor. The Germans gave him an SS rank, Waffenoberführer. But this new army did not fight conventional battles. Their war was against their own people. In the birch forests of Western Russia, Kaminski's men hunted partisans and anyone suspected of aiding them. The line between combatants and civilian vanished. Villages were surrounded at dawn. Residents were herded into squares. Executions were carried out in silence. The bodies left as warnings. Partisan commander Alexei Saburov wrote, "Kaminski's bandits have introduced new horrors to our struggle. Death comes slowly." Even German officers began to question what they had unleashed. One report noted that the RO and AS methods exceeded even the harsh necessities of war, yet Berlin tolerated it. Because it worked, the RO and AS brutal tactics temporarily weakened partisan networks, but at a terrible price. Entire regions were emptied, their populations scattered or slaughtered. Kaminski became a kind of feudal warlord, ruling through fear. Wearing a Nazi uniform over his hatred for Stalin, his transformation was complete. From prisoner of the Gulag to executioner of the East. Thunder from the East, the retreat to Belarus. Their journey to Belarus was apocalyptic. Soviet aircraft strafed the convoys. Partisans ambushed from the forests. Hunger and disease consumed the stragglers. Yet somehow, Kaminski survived and convinced Himmler himself to grant refuge for his men. In Belarus, Rona was reorganized as a mobile anti-partisan unit under SS command. Erich von dem Boxelewski, the SS general overseeing operations, praised Rona as the most effective Russian collaborationist force. Their tactics did not change, only the scenery. Villages burned, civilians were deported, and the body count rose. One German situation report recorded, coldly, 347 partisans liquidated, 1,200 civilians relocated. It was bureaucratic genocide, extermination by spreadsheet. But even as Kaminski's star rose within the SS hierarchy, his fate was already sealed. The Nazis had created a monster they could no longer control. The Warsaw Inferno. August 1944, Warsaw. As Soviet troops approached from the east, the Polish Home Army rose up in rebellion, hoping to liberate the capital before the Red Army arrived. But Hitler had other plans. He ordered the total annihilation of Warsaw. To carry it out, Himmler unleashed the two most brutal formations under his command, Oskar Dirlewanger's Penal Battalion and Kaminski's Rona Brigade. What followed was not a battle, it was a massacre. The Rona Brigade, numbering over 6,000 men, entered Warsaw's Ochota and Wola districts. They looted, raped, and slaughtered civilians with abandon. Witnesses described drunken men speaking Russian and German, setting buildings ablaze, executing the wounded, and bayoneting hospital patients. Nurse Maria Warder wrote, "They came shouting and laughing. First they killed the wounded, then the nurses, then anyone they found." At the Wola hospital, more than 400 people were murdered in a single afternoon. Even the hardened SS veterans were horrified. Boxelewski issued orders demanding restraint, but his words were drowned in blood and gunfire. Dirlewanger himself reportedly remarked that Rona's men were remarkably enthusiastic in terrorizing civilians. Kaminski had achieved infamy. He was no longer a collaborator. He was a symbol of chaos itself. And for Himmler, that made him expendable. The reckoning, the atrocities in Warsaw were so severe that they threatened to embarrass the Nazi regime itself. Reports of Kaminski's looting and indiscipline reached the highest levels of the SS. Even Reinfarth, a fellow butcher of Warsaw, complained that Kaminski's men behaved like bandits. The decision came swiftly. Kaminski was summoned to Łódź under the pretext of a promotion. He arrived confident, dressed in his SS uniform, expecting no honors. Instead, he faced a summary court-martial. The charges, theft, corruption, and conduct unbecoming of an SS officer. The verdict was predetermined. On August 28, 1944, Bronislaw Kaminski was executed by firing squad. His body was cremated, his ashes scattered, and his name erased from official Nazi records. To the SS, Kaminski was no longer useful. To history, he became a ghost, a reminder that even monsters can outgrow their masters. The moral weight of choice. When news of Kaminski's death reached his men, panic erupted. Rona disintegrated almost overnight. Some defected to the Germans, Others deserted. Many were captured and executed by the advancing Soviets. By war's end, the Dirlewanger Brigade was gone. Its legacy measured not in victories, but in graves. Post-war investigators estimated their victims numbered over 50,000 civilians. For Stalin, the collaborators were traitors. For the Nazis, they were expendable tools. For a history, they remain a chilling example of how ideology, vengeance, and desperation can twist men into executioners of their own kind. In the end, Kaminski's story is not just about collaboration, it's about the moral abyss that opens when human beings surrender conscience for survival or power. The Nazis built a machine of destruction. Kaminski became one of its gears, and when that machine turned on him, it crushed him as it crushed millions.